Our first speakers are Julia and Martin Boles, who've come all the way from Southern California. I heard you guys got evacuated. Is that true? But did your house survive? You two did. That's.
We have refugees whose houses didn't survive living in our houses.
Okay. Well, yeah, so you may not have realized how lucky we were to get our Californian speakers here. Julia is from this area originally. She went to the University of Virginia, where she got a degree in English and economics. She then went on to work in the White House and the Attorney General's office, and then the Heritage Foundation, which is where I am now. So, yeah, a great place to be. Martin graduated from Dartmouth College, where he was a senior when I was a freshman. But he ran in a better crowd than I did, so we did not know each other. He majored in geology and worked in a mining company after college. When the mining companies began laying off many of their young geologists, apparently maybe the more troublesome ones, during the 1982 recession, some of us remember that, I do, he pivoted careers and got a JD and MBA from Stanford. Stepped down from Dartmouth, but that's okay. You've recovered. Julia and Martin met here in Washington when neither of them was Catholic. Julia was an Episcopalian. Martin's affiliation at that time has not been revealed to me. Pagan. Yeah. I'm not supposed to open up too many cans of worms in these introductions. But anyway, he was meeting with the priest of Opus Dei, and they converted, they got married, they moved to California, and you can just fill in the blanks from there. Their oldest child, Ginny, who is here with us, is a teacher at Oakcrest. And as wonderful as Ginny is, it was actually not all downhill from there for them. They managed to keep it. They have 9 wonderful children. I've met a few of them. Actually, my son lives with one of them in Chicago. And the youngest, I was told, just entered college this fall. Is that correct, or is that old information?
Junior.
He's a junior. Okay, junior in college. The Boles family sense of mission exists not only inside the family, but manifests itself in work outside the home as well. In fact, they embarked on one of the most, difficult and suicidal missions you can come up with: start a school, right? So that's what I usually wish on my enemies. I'm like, why don't you start a school? It's easy, But they did start a school, St. Monica Academy in California in 2001. It's still going strong, having gone from 44 students to over 300 now, 1st through 12th grade. All right, I will stop droning on here. Martin and Julia will speak on the joys and rewards of a large family, which they have lots of firsthand experience of, urging us to go with the flow, enjoy the show. So Martin and Julia.
Well, thank you for that. I was just telling Ginny, the most extraordinary thing is how young all y'all look. It's amazing. But just to add a little to the introduction and to set the stage for my remarks, I think it's important to know, so we had 9 children in 14 years. When the 6th was born, the oldest was 5. When the 7th was born, the oldest was 7. And we were completely unprepared for all of this. Martin comes from a family of 2. I come from a family of 3. And people don't believe it, but when we were dating, we never had that well, maybe you do believe it. We never actually had the conversation of how many children we wanted. We probably should have had that conversation. But all of that is to say that our decision to have a large family was not based on prior experience or even proclivity, right? And I can tell you with complete candor that I was terrified every time I found out I was pregnant. The joy of having a large family for us took us completely by surprise, to say the least. And I think it just goes to show that God's plans really are better than our plans, or in our case, the lack thereof, right? Okay, and we did love it, but having a large family is not always seen as a joy-filled bed of roses. And it's certainly not a popular choice these days, right? I remember once when I was pregnant with number 7 or 8, my sister asked me straight up, why? Why so many? And Martin will be quick to tell you that it's because it's so much fun. And he'll speak to that shortly. But in the moment, I was caught flat-footed. Why was I having all these kids? Well, partly because that's the natural course of things. I remember once, actually many, many times, bawling my eyes out in the confessional and telling the priest, I think I'm pregnant again. And the priest is probably thinking, didn't she just say the same thing last month? But every year or so, I was right. Okay. But the spiritual advice he gave me not only gave me great comfort and consolation at the time, it pointed to a greater truth. He reminded me, and he said, if you're expecting another baby, then God was there in the moment of creation of that new soul. Another baby is not outside the providence, the all-loving providence of God. He is allowing it to happen, so it must be a great thing because he loves you and he only wants the best for you. Then the priest went on to say to me that the average woman has about 20 years of fertility. And all other things being equal, the average woman has a baby every 2 years or so. Clearly, I was above average at the time. But so the average family could easily have 10 kids. I was so stunned, I stopped crying. It blew my mind. And I would just say it was a very experienced priest. Mostly, I think he just wanted to stop me crying. But anyway, the point is, we're not super parents. I'm not a super mom. This is how God created us. And as it turned out, Martin and I lived in a community in the middle of La La Land, no less, where having 9 children was only slightly above average. Within our friend group, there was a family of 17 children. Where's 17 children, another with 13, 2 with 11, 2 with 10, 4 of us had 9, and there were several with 6 and 7 kids. So God may not have prepared Martin and me for a large family and our families of origin, but he did surround us with a cloud of witnesses that showed us the beauty of a large family. You know, I remember watching a teenage boy hold his toddler brother en masse like it was the most natural thing in the world. I remember seeing a family with a lot of girls, and they all shared a room, and they all shared a closet, and they all shared the same clothes. And you didn't hear, you know, oh, that's my stuff. What you heard is, no, try this. This will look cuter, you know. So there was this beauty that we saw in these families around us. And we also observed these families shouldering very real challenges. The death of a child, the birth of a baby with special needs, the loss of a job, or just honestly, just the daily challenges of carpooling or laundry or family meals. But they did it with a supernatural equanimity that we attributed to the abandonment to the will of God that was manifest in their family size, right? So, but I want to say there's still no denying, as beautiful as it was, there is no denying that having a large family is messy, both figuratively and literally. And one of my favorite big family stories is actually from my sister. She was going to visit a family friend out in Utah, and they had 5 kids. And the mother had said, look, it's crazy around here. You guys just come as you are, and you get us as is. Fine, great. So my sister goes out there. When they arrive at their house, she kind of looks around and silently observes, wow, she was true to her word. This is really as is. Until one of the kids came out, and they said, oh, thank God you're here. We've been cleaning all week. Okay. Messy though it may be, there is a more profound answer to the question, why so many? And I just want to add a little quick caveat here. Not everyone is blessed to have a large family. I am personally close to people who've struggled with serious pregnancy issues and infertility. It is a heartbreaking mystery of God's providence. So we are very aware that to have a big family is a huge privilege and a responsibility. But for us, having a large family has been very formative and fruitful in many important ways. For starters, it has forcibly pushed Martin and me well past our comfort zone and made us better, much better than we would have been if our children had not stretched us, I think often painfully, past our deeply ingrained selfishness and egoism. Having a large family is a daily reminder of our utter dependence on God and completely strips away the illusion that we're in control. Having a large family kept us and keeps us on our knees, which is where we should be anyway, right? And as good as it is for the parents, perhaps more importantly, we are convinced that it is really, really good for the children themselves. All parents want the best for their children. That's just, it's a good and just thing. And we work and we sacrifice to ensure that we can give them the best, right? Or the best we possibly can. But I think one may be tempted to limit one's family so we can give each child more of our attention, more educational opportunities. We feel having too many children, whatever that number is, will deprive each individual child of her fullest potential, of his personal achievement and fulfillment. But life is not about personal achievement. It's about personal gift. And I think our oldest child, she doesn't like this, but I like this story anyway. I think our oldest child captured this idea well in one of her college applications essays, the opening lines of which were, "Have you ever been counted? I'm the oldest of 9 children, and we get counted a lot. We get counted at the grocery store, we get counted as we walk through the airport, we get counted through the window of our 15-seater van." She went on to point out, very accurately, that her parents counted on her a lot to help out at home, so she was used to managing a lot of responsibility. And she made the final point that, if accepted to this prestigious institution of higher learning, she intended to make her life count. Get that? Count. It was an essay, okay. But making your life count, living life as a mission, this can happen in any size family, but it happens more naturally, more easily, more consistently in a large family. A large family is a natural way to form people who are capable of taking care of other people and want to, who naturally want to contribute to the good of society. We need more people who know how to give to the utmost, who know how to serve without limit. We we need heroes. We need saints. We need vocations. You know, why would our children want to trust their entire lives to God if we won't even trust them with our fertility? And I just want to be sure I say there are legitimate reasons not to have another child. And only the spouses can make that decision. And Mother Church insists on that. But I would just make two little suggestions. One, find a spiritual director who will give you good criteria to help you make that decision. And also, don't make that decision on your worst day. Okay, because I think often, knowingly or not, the decision is made to limit our family in an attempt to control outcomes, right? It sort of becomes a quality control issue. But I think through experience, we've come to realize that the best qualities, the qualities we want our children to have, are not diminished by quantity and actually are often enhanced by them. And I just want to say the very best thing we can give our children for their lifelong and eternal happiness, if God allows, is another sibling. Because the very best thing about a large family is the natural web of love that is created around and amongst the individual members of that family. And just naturally, the more children you have, the bigger and the stronger that web is. And honestly, the kids just love it. They love it when they're young, and they love it when they're adults. But, you know, realistically, for the mom, it can at times be a little more trying. And I remember once going to my spiritual director and saying, I am utterly overwhelmed. I am barely meeting the physical needs of my children, much less their emotional and psychological needs. I just can't do it all. And she said, you aren't supposed to. They have each other. And I think our children would attest that each of them, if you asked them individually, that they treasure their relationships with their siblings, and that coming from a large family made them more resilient, more personally confident, and less susceptible to the social pressures because they were part of a greater whole. Look, nothing is better for our kids in this affluent and entitled culture than having to deal with and take care of their siblings. They naturally learn to be problem solvers, to be cooperative, to be attentive to the needs of others, to be dutiful, responsible, loving, forgiving. And I just want to end with a little word of encouragement. I am looking at all these young faces. They're like deer in the headlights. But just a word of encouragement and hope for the families who are in the thick of it right now, right? Yes, having a large family is crazy hard sometimes. The days are long, but the years are short. The craziness peaks soon enough, the balance tips, and the return on investment comes much sooner than you would think. And these days, as Martin and I are enjoying the fruits of our labor, and we see each of our children contributing in meaningful ways to their families and communities, no one asks us anymore, why so many? So anyway, I've shared some of the concerns and messy realities of a big family, as well, I hope, as the overwhelming compensations. And now Martin's here to talk about the fun.
I'm going to stand here so I can see my own slides. Well, I wish I had known everything we just heard 35 years ago when Julie and I started out in our married and family life. But as she indicated, she wasn't even Catholic at the time. I was a beginner and a bewildered Catholic. We were uprooted quickly from this area where I'd been seeing a priest of Opus Dei and getting good instruction to crazy California. And and what's more, I still carry with me to this day the themes of my upbringing, which was a very, very good upbringing, but it was very strongly Calvinist from my ancestry. And so a lot of good notions of discipline, control, don't do anything crazy, plan things out, that grain was not compatible, to say the least, with this idea of having a large family. And frankly, I didn't have the idea of having a large family when we started out. And as we went along, kind of like the proverbial frog in the cold water on the stove, getting hotter and hotter, I had questions. And they're good questions. And so I wanted to use some humorous pictures to illustrate the answers that time has taught me to those natural questions that come up. So the first is, that's not what it looks like, right, when you first start out. And so the question is, when this group are toddlers, how do you handle them all? And the answer is, you don't. They handle you. But the serious point from that is actually that especially this is a kind of a thing I learned as a father who was kind of a striving professional, trying to make partner in a law firm, very preoccupied with work, sometimes working 7 days a week, sometimes working weeks at a time in a different state or even a different country, is that it was very important for me when I wasn't working, and for all of us, there are times when you aren't, to just engage, to drop my golf game, to drop my skiing, drop my annual backpacking trip with my high school buddies, and just be all in for those kids. And when you do, and especially this is a message to dads, they will flock to you. They will, you can then become a magnetic cultural leader that really helps to form them. Next question. How can I get my work done with so much distraction? So many kids demanding and needing my attention and frankly causing chaos. Well, I will answer that question by reference to my own profession, which is law, and to think, okay, how can someone be a great lawyer with this sort of kids running the household and causing chaos? And really, has there ever been a great lawyer who did that? Like, let's take the greatest lawyer in American history, Abraham Lincoln. And this diorama from the Lincoln Museum in Springfield, Illinois, I think answers that question. That's not an excuse. Maybe we don't have all the equanimity and it doesn't come naturally, but we can acquire that. Next question. What about my health? I need time to get away to the gym and spend time with my fitness trainer. Well, you have 9 fitness trainers. This is a great way to develop core strength. And it is a lifetime sport. Those are my grandchildren, some of them. And then again, the serious lesson is, and I actually learned this not at all with thinking I'm headed to a large family, but when I finished my high school athletic career and put away the uniform, I knew I sort of had this more from just how hard my dad worked. I knew I'd never be able to do the kind of training I did when I was on a varsity team. So I resolved I'm going to at least keep a little fitness in the way my dad did when he was working 7 days a week as a surgeon and a university academician, was to just choose a core set of things that are doable anywhere in 15 minutes a day, like a few push-ups, platforms, and one set of barbells, and do that the rest of my life. So that is compatible. Next question. What about family meals? I don't want food fights. With 9 kids, by the time the last one is served, the first one is finished and whining for more. or for dessert. I would even say with 6 kids, because our daughter now has 6 children, and because I've moved down to their county, Orange County, to be the headmaster of their school. God knoweth why, but I have meals with them quite often, and it's all coming back to me now. Just what a mess it is, and the answer to that is I don't have an answer to that. That's the way it is. But I will say the Bible is right when it talks about the blessing of having your family like olive plants around your table, that it is a great joy, and it's a great joy with the little grandkids. It's a even greater joy when they're adults and you go around the table talking about wonderful things and sharing experiences. What about Christmas? How can you impose on your wife the demands of filling 9 stockings, or when the grandchildren come around, a countless number of stockings and all the presents that go with it? Aren't holiday times crazy? And the answer is, of course, yes. But you've got 9 children that can help you decorate the 14-foot Christmas tree. And you have that many children to help you put the lights on all of the geometry of your house, as long as the Child Protective Services aren't cruising by when you do this. But they'll always remember that. And also the old-fashioned custom of Christmas caroling. You don't have to call all the neighbors or organize the kids in the club or the school. You just take your kids out to the neighbors and go Christmas caroling. And again, to kind of drop into a more serious mode, a trend you'll see here in, again, what I learned just by experience of doing it, is that these things that are kind of throwback countercultural things, like just having a conversation at a meal, having meals together, as opposed to, well, so-and-so's got a piano lesson, so-and-so's off to ballet practice, so-and-so's got a club sport game, so we never get together as a family, or we're all looking at phones. To sit down as often as you can, preferably daily, at least on Sundays, and have a family meal and put the phones away and look at each other in the eye and talk to each other is, and research shows, is the most important formative thing you can do with your children in terms of eventual happiness, study habits, and so forth. And one of those things and so the more things you do that are countercultural, that are natural and fun, like Christmas caroling, the more you're planting in your children's minds, without them even knowing it, the memory that we had the most fun just doing things that we chose to do. Not what everybody else is doing. Not everybody else goes to the water park, or everybody else plays video games. And even things, just that I, as now someone going to college, I'm accustomed to seeking fun in the way I choose and organizing others to do it. And your children will become kind of Pied Pipers of wholesome activities and able to say no when everybody else is going to the fraternity party on a Thursday night. And the other thing too is this, and other things like this, like visiting a nursing home, taking your kids to visiting a nursing home, this is forming them in generosity. Again, in the disguise of fun. They're going to people's homes they don't know. They have that little bit of discomfort at first of having the door open and people they don't know that well, maybe an elderly couple or something like that, and then singing. But after a while, they actually get used to it and love it and look forward to it. But that's an act of generosity, without them even necessarily realizing it explicitly. And again, gives them that lifelong habit. And these couples, the couple who took this picture and the other couples on that block where we lived at the time, for decades, literally decades later, until they passed away, would write us an annual Christmas card saying, we still remember how much we loved it when you and your children came to sing Christmas carols at our house. Oh, Halloween. That's another one. how can you possibly, look, I can't have a pumpkin patch with that many pumpkins for 9 children. Well, actually, you can. And Celine Kinnenberg is actually in that picture somewhere. Do you remember that pumpkin patch, Celine? And again, gardening, just one of dozens of examples of things. Okay, we're going to have a garden and grow a pumpkin patch. Again, just sort of something that we set our own culture, we set our own preferences, and that was a blast. Now, what about carving the jack-o'-lanterns? How do you not get carpal tunnel syndrome after you scrape out and carve that many jack-o'-lanterns? And it's true that I definitely had some sore forearm muscles after that. But by the time this picture was taken, every one of those jack-o'-lanterns was carved by one of the kids on his or her own. They become journeyman and eventually master jack-o'-lantern carvers. And again, jack-o'-lanterns. Again, my wife is going to roll her eyes because she thinks I think way too much about Halloween. Pagan that I was, it's still there. But seriously, my son went off to New York City, as a lot of college graduates do. And what did he do in New York City on Halloween? There's a picture of him with a bunch of people from the Middle East and Europe and Africa that he got together, his friends, and they're all sitting there holding the jack-o'-lanterns they carved. In other words, they become leaders of culture, of wholesome, fun culture, and I think this is very important. And besides, when you have a large family, where are you going to put the little toddler to keep him safe with all those knives around? You put him in the pumpkin, and he's perfectly safe. Okay. This and the other thing is just this is Thanksgiving, and again, note to dads, a reminder to us that engage and lead. We don't just we are. It's important. Our breadwinning, our professions are of primary importance, to be sure, but we cannot completely abdicate the leadership and service in the home to our wives. In fact, we should, in our minds, have the same professional outlook we do in our careers, which is, I get a little bit of litigation speak here, but I got to think ahead. I'm going to think of themes. I want to do this very well, and I want to know what's the outcome. How are we going to win at trial? And so that same kind of, I would submit, with no less intentionality, planning, intensity, commitment, we should also lead in the home. And for that, I would commend a book about St. Thomas More, the greatest lawyer in the Anglo-American tradition, but before he started serving King Henry VIII, was the busiest, most sought after, and richest lawyer in the city of London, in the commercial district of England. Extremely busy professional, had a large family. And this book by Professor Gerard Wegemer of the University of Dallas called Portrait of Courage, it's a little handbook for busy professional men who are also husbands and fathers. And Professor Wegemer shows how Thomas More, and he even had a long commute. He had to go from his home in Chelsea all the way downriver to the palace, or upriver to Windsor. He minded the details of his home. He spent time with his children. He read to them. He paid close attention to what is being taught to them, and wrote out explicit instructions to their tutor and so on. Brought a lot of things home to set a culture in the home. That book is a real inspiration. I read it 5 times over the course of 30 years of parenting, and every 5 years I'd come back to it, and I would still put 20 Post-it notes in there of new resolutions to be a better dad, and those were compelling to me because I knew I've got no excuse. That guy had just as much demands on his time, just as much importance as what he was doing. So, Portrait of Courage by Gerard Wegemer. But here you can see, every year I read the same little fun Thanksgiving book, but it does have some history in it. It has a little bit of a countercultural history in it, but it's also just, again, putting some culture in as a regular dose of what goes on in the family. Okay, what about vacations? How can you take the kids to Machu Picchu or the Mount Everest base camp, or my vacations are gonna, I'm not gonna be able to go rock climbing or take them to Thailand or something like that. And my answer to that is, so what? It's not. As Tom mentioned, I was a geologist and I worked in South America and Central America, and I loved the adventures of. And in my law career, I worked in the Republic of the Marshall Islands in the Western Pacific, and in Germany. And I love travel, and I've learned a lot from it. But that's not what family life is about. It's not about putting a bunch of pins in a map or being able to brag about our ecotourism or something like that. All those things can be good in and of themselves, but our kids, just as I did as a young adult, and many of you did as well, our kids will have a chance to do that. They don't need to do it with us. That's not what we need to form them in. Vacations should be a time of they can be very simple. And I think that's a good thing no matter how many children you have. So here's an example of just renting an RV, putting the kids in an RV, going out to the Four Corners area of Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico, and just enjoying the outdoors. We didn't have to make a reservation. We didn't, and just learn the geology, learn about the Navajo and the Hopi Indian tribes, learn about the desert, and those are things that are easy to do, or just go camping. Here's a place where again, Celine Kinneberg went to. We went on this vacation with her family, the Talbot family. But not only did we not need a reservation for this, we didn't have to fight the crowds. We were the crowd. This is a tributary to the Colorado River, so it's just a few miles upstream from the Grand Canyon, where it's really hard to get in the summer. Nobody else was here at this place. This is called Goosenecks State Park in the state of Utah, and I think it was just as spectacular as the Grand Canyon. So if we're resourceful, we can have great vacations with our family. And again, we're teaching them as we do this. We don't go where everybody else goes necessarily. It may be good, it may not be good, but we have an independent way of thinking, and we look for things that are beautiful, that are historical, that are natural, that are and the beach, of course, is something well, of course, I'm in my California mindset, but that we can do in a half an hour, and I think you can do it here too, in the Chesapeake Bay or the Potomac River or the Shenandoah River. Okay, I can't afford help with all those children, and it is nice to have help, but the best help we can get for when we have a large family is a great spiritual director, and that is a huge help to the family, unless the people from the Washington, D.C. area take away our spiritual director and make him the associate chaplain of the Heights School. But we still get good spiritual direction from other priests of Opus Dei. Going now to just kind of the end, as Julia was talking about the fruits, where you sort of forget, the Bible talks about metaphorically, I can't speak personally, although we have a daughter-in-law right now in labor as we speak, but the Bible talks about how a woman going through the pains of labor, kind of ties in with today's Mass too, doesn't it? But going through the pains of labor just forgets all about it when that child is brought to her and put at her breast. So you have these moments, especially the sacramental moments, that where you remember this was all worth it. I wouldn't have changed a thing. The sacrament of marriage, the sacrament of baptism, and more baptisms, and more baptisms, and maybe, if God wills, the sacrament of ordination of one of your children. And then, when that priest's son then gives First Holy Communion to two of your grandchildren. But to wrap up, and again, to be perfectly candid, looking back on it, I can't say that what all the joys and goodness that Julia and I have been blessed with is any part of my wisdom or planning or good decisions. But I can say that, looking back with confidence, that the best sort of default decision I ever made, besides marrying Julia and becoming a Catholic, the best decision I ever made was to not decide to limit the number of children we had. The best thing that ever happened to me was to have a large family, to be brought out of my kind of narrow and kind of selfish, but also just a little too controlling and attached to certain things that are good, but to be like Bilbo Baggins leaving the Hobbit hole and going to an adventure, to leave good things at the Hobbit hole for even better things. The adventure, the satisfaction of having had an adventure of that life, to grow, speaking to for myself, in my resilience, my flexibility, my generosity, my tolerance of chaos, and it's been a ball. It has been a ball. And most important of all, our children are so happy. And they're so happy that they grew up in a large family. And I think that they're now kind of sharing that happiness with others as well. So I wish you all that kind of happiness if you can have it. And Julie and I are always just a phone call away, or if you come out to California, hosting you a visit of yours away from talking it over and sharing the fun and adventure you'll have. And we thank you for inviting us.